Barron Trump called Jasmine Crockett unfit. Then her recording silenced the whole nation. The Georgetown University debate hall buzzed with energy. Students, faculty, and journalists packed into every available seat. The debate, originally billed as a standard discussion on youth political engagement, had turned into the most anticipated event of the semester. Cameras were rolling. C-SPAN was live. Social media hashtags like Barron vs. Crockett and Gen Z politics were already trending. At the center of it all sat Barron Trump. 18 years old, freshman, and towering at 6'8", he was a commanding presence. Dressed in a navy jacket and a red striped tie, he looked like the embodiment of a new political era. Son of a former president, heir to a controversial legacy, and determined to carve his own path. Across from him sat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Sharp, eloquent, and unflinching Crockett was known for her no-nonsense style and unfiltered truth-telling. Tonight, she wasn't here as a politician. She was here as a challenger to entitlement, privilege, and political theater. Moderating the event was Dr. Sarah Martinez, Chair of Political Science. "Let's begin," she said, her voice calm but firm. Tonight's topic: how do we better engage Gen Z in American politics? Jasmine Crockett answered first. We engage Gen Z by being honest with them, by meeting them where they are. Through TikTok town halls, community organizing, not just lecturing from ivory towers, and we have to be real, Gen Z sees through fake news faster than any generation before them. The room murmured in approval. Then Barron leaned into the microphone. "Thank you, Dr. Martinez. Representative Crockett's passion is admirable, but we have to ask ourselves, is she the right person to guide America's youth? Someone who weaponizes outrage for political capital, who confuses activism with governance." Gasps rippled through the audience. Barron continued. "This generation needs structure, not slogans. Discipline, not drama. Crockett may inspire hashtags, but what we need is policy that works." Jasmine's smile was slight, calculated. She replied, "Interesting. Point, Mr. Trump. But if we're talking about policy and not performance, why don't we discuss your own record or lack thereof? You've never held office, never passed legislation. Yet here you are questioning someone who's done both." The students erupted in nervous laughter. The tension was electric. Barron didn't blink. "I don't need a voting record to speak the truth. And the truth is, your politics thrives on division, on calling people racists and extremists because it gets you retweets." Jasmine's eyes narrowed, but her tone stayed cool. "And yours thrives on nostalgia for a past that never existed, on sound bites that sound bold but mean nothing." "Tell me, Barron, do you actually believe in what you say?" He hesitated, just for a second. But it was there. Jasmine leaned forward. "Because I do. I believe every word I say, even when it's hard, even when it doesn't get applause." Dr. Martinez raised a hand. "Let's bring the focus back." "Next question. What should young Americans expect from their future political leaders?" Barron jumped in. "They should expect courage, conviction, a willingness to fight for what's right, even when the media turns on you. They should expect honesty." Jasmine tilted her head. "Honesty? That's rich." Barron's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Jasmine pulled out her phone. "I wasn't planning to do this," she said, "but since you brought up honesty..." She held the phone up, thumb poised over the play button. "This is a recording from 3 weeks ago." Barron Trump, in his own words, during a conversation with a Georgetown journalism student, "Let's see what you really believe." Barron's face changed. The confident expression flickered. The audience leaned in. Jasmine pressed play. Barron's voice filled the auditorium. "Look, I don't actually believe half the stuff I say in these debates. It's all about branding. The constitutional law stuff. Theater. My dad taught me, say what gets you power, then do what you want." A stunned silence fell over the crowd. Another voice asked, "What do you really believe then?" Barron again. "Honestly, my dad went too far. The election fraud stuff, January 6th, a disaster. But I can't say that publicly. The base would destroy me." The room was frozen. Jasmine paused the recording. "Shall I continue?" Dr. Martinez looked shell-shocked. Students stared at Barron, waiting. Barron stood. "That was a private conversation. I didn't consent to being recorded." Jasmine nodded. Maybe so. But when you come on the stage and preach about honesty, when you call me unfit, you owe the truth to these students. The crowd erupted in whispers. Some began recording. Others exchanged glances. The balance of power had shifted. This wasn't just a debate anymore. It was a reckoning. And the real battle had only begun. The energy in Georgetown's grand debate hall didn't fade overnight. News outlets buzzed with headlines about the explosive confrontation between Barron Trump and Representative Jasmine Crockett. Clips circulated with millions of views. Hashtags like Georgetown Debate, Barron vs. Crockett, and Truth Leak trended across platforms. But now attention turned toward the fallout. 3 days after the debate, Barron Trump's silence was deafening. He canceled all public appearances. His normally active social media accounts went dark. Rumors swirled. Was he expelled? Had he dropped out? Or was he preparing a counterstrike? In contrast, Jasmine Crockett thrived. She made morning show appearances, gave a TED-style talk on youth accountability, and was hailed as a new voice of truth in politics. Her monologue and the now infamous recording had exposed not just Barron, but the entire illusion of generational political legacy. Georgetown faculty were flooded with emails. Some praised Jasmine for holding Barron accountable. Others accused her of ambushing a student. The debate over ethics, privacy, and public trust sparked lectures, student forums, and even protests on both sides. Then came Barron's return. A week later, he appeared in his constitutional law class wearing a muted gray blazer, eyes sunken but chin high. Students quieted as he walked in. Professor Levinson nodded at him but said nothing. Barron sat in the second row, no longer in the front, where he used to dominate discussions. That afternoon, his statement was finally released. The recording played during the Georgetown debate was a private conversation recorded without my knowledge or consent. While the language used may have been overly cynical, it reflects a deeper commentary on the current state of American politics. I remain committed to my path, and I look forward to continuing respectful public dialogue. Critics called it deflection. Supporters called it resilience, but few could deny the cracks in his image. Later that week, the Washington Post released an investigative feature titled "The Theater of Barron Trump When Performance Becomes Policy." It traced his rise through Georgetown's political club, dissected his carefully curated persona, and quoted anonymous peers describing how Barron memorized arguments like scripts. One section stood out. It revealed that the student journalist who had recorded him, Jaime Martinez, had initially admired Barron. The article quoted Martinez. He was brilliant, but brilliance without sincerity is just manipulation. Facing growing public scrutiny, Barron requested to hold a town hall on campus. It was granted. The day of the town hall, the debate hall was once again filled to capacity. This time, however, there was no opponent on stage, just Barron alone at the podium. I came to Georgetown believing I could shape the future. He began, his voice quieter than usual. I thought I could do that through careful messaging, calculated alliances, and maintaining a polished narrative. But I forgot the most important element: authenticity. A murmur ran through the audience. He continued, "The recording you heard wasn't a gotcha. It was the truth. Not the whole truth, but enough. Enough to make me realize that I had become exactly what I claimed to oppose." Students leaned forward. Professors watched with narrowed eyes. "I don't ask for forgiveness. I ask for your challenge. Hold me accountable. If I rebuild from here, it will not be with spin. It will be with purpose." He stepped away from the microphone. The room stood silent for several seconds before a tentative applause began. Some stood. Others crossed their arms. Jasmine Crockett, seated in the back row, offered a slow, respectful nod. Still, not everyone was ready to move on. Conservative commentators accused the university of betraying Barron's privacy. Liberal voices celebrated the exposure as a necessary cleansing of political hypocrisy. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett was invited to testify before the House Committee on Political Ethics. She described her actions not as personal attacks, but as interventions. "If we allow ambition to mask intention," she said, "then democracy becomes a stage, not a system." As weeks passed, both figures took different paths. Barron pulled back from clubs and campus appearances. He dropped his high-profile elective on political media strategy, Instead, he enrolled in a seminar on ethics and public integrity. He rarely spoke, but always listened. Jasmine returned to Congress with new momentum. She introduced a bill calling for mandatory political ethics training for congressional interns and young aides. The bill stalled, but her visibility soared. Georgetown became a flashpoint for the national conversation. Political science departments across the country added the debate to their syllabi. The confrontation was dissected on talk shows, podcasts, and YouTube think pieces. But the most remarkable moment came during a surprise panel hosted by the university titled The Future of Leadership. Unexpectedly, both Barron Trump and Jasmine Crockett were invited. They sat on opposite ends of the stage. The moderator, a respected former ambassador, opened with a question, "What have you learned from each other?" Barron answered first, "I learned that intellect without integrity is dangerous. That appearance can't protect you from the truth, and that power misused is power lost." Jasmine waited, then replied, "I learned that even those born into privilege can surprise you. That being called out isn't always punishment. It can be the start of change." The applause was measured. Sincerely, as the panel ended, Barron extended a hand. Jasmine took it. For a moment, the audience saw not scandal, not sides, but growth. And at that moment, Georgetown wasn't just a school. It was the arena where the next generation of leaders began to understand what real leadership looked like. The days following the panel marked a subtle shift in how Barron Trump carried himself. He didn't return to his old ways. Gone were the tailored media-ready suits and calculated social posts. In their place was something quieter. Jean's open notebooks, a genuine pause before speaking. Yet as Barron pulled back, Jasmine Crockett stepped forward with precision. She began appearing on major political shows, not just as a guest, but as an authority. MSNBC, CNN, even a tense exchange on Fox News. The clips racked up millions of views. What set her apart wasn't just the fact that she had gone viral, it was that she wasn't exploiting it. "I don't enjoy dragging anyone," she said during an NPR interview. "I simply refuse to let someone build their influence on dishonesty. Our country can't afford that anymore." Meanwhile, the Georgetown debate had become a full-blown media case study. Professors at Yale and Stanford hosted Zoom panels about authenticity and performative politics. High school AP government teachers assigned the transcript as homework. Barron's name was no longer just associated with scandal, it was linked to a national rethinking of what it means to be a public figure. One night, a clip surfaced from a podcast Barron had recorded months earlier but never released. In it, he discussed the burden of legacy. "Being a Trump isn't a privilege, it's a performance," he said. "You walk into every room already shaped by someone else's script. You either learn to edit the story or be consumed by it." The quote trended for days. That same week, Jasmine introduced another bill, one requiring mandatory transparency clauses for political scholarships and think tanks. It gained traction surprisingly fast. Even some moderate Republicans lent their support. It was a legislative move that solidified her transition from firebrand to reformer. But not everyone was comfortable with the turn of events. A conservative student coalition at Georgetown accused Jasmine of waging a character assassination campaign. They demanded an apology event. She refused. "I don't apologize for the truth," she said at a campus town hall. "But I do believe in redemption, if you're sincere." Barron attended that town hall, not as a speaker, but as a listener. He didn't flinch. When a student asked Jasmine directly if she thought Barron still had a political future, she paused before answering. "That's up to him, not me. But future leaders are shaped like fire. He's been through some flames. Now we'll see if he builds or burns," the crowd murmured. Barron only nodded. Weeks later, in a closed seminar on political rehabilitation, Barron shared his own roadmap. "Step 1, he said, stop pretending. Step 2, serve more than speak. Step 3, never forget who your words reach. They're not just lines in a debate, they're promises to the future." His words didn't go viral, but they echoed in the hearts of the dozen students present. Jasmine, watching from the back, made no statement, but she stayed until the end. Months passed. Jasmine's bill passed committee vote. Barron co-authored a campus initiative on debate ethics. Georgetown released a short documentary titled Truth and Legacy, featuring both figures. And in one unexpected gesture, the Georgetown Political Science Department announced a joint scholarship in both of their names, the Crockett Trump Leadership Award. Applications opened with a single prompt. Describe a moment when telling the truth cost you something and why it was worth it. The launch of the Crockett Trump Leadership Award caught fire across the academic and political landscape. News anchors debated its symbolism. Editorials praised the transformation on both sides. One headline read, "From confrontation to collaboration, Georgetown's unlikely alliance." But under the surface of praise and publicity, quiet pressure was building. Back in Texas, Jasmine Crockett faced backlash from her own base. Progressive circles that once hailed her as a fearless firebrand began questioning her motives. Social media posts accused her of going soft. "You don't build bridges with liars," read one tweet with 50,000 likes. Jasmine addressed the criticism directly in a live stream. "I didn't give Barron Trump a pass," she said. "I gave him space to grow." That's what leadership is. That's what accountability looks like when it's honest and not vengeful. Barron, meanwhile, wasn't just listening, he was responding. He turned down an internship at a major conservative think tank, citing a need to listen more, posture less. Instead, he joined a civic program in Baltimore, tutoring high school seniors on constitutional rights. It was there he began to understand the gap between theoretical debates and lived experiences. "You don't understand justice," he said in one reflection essay, "until you sit across from someone who's been denied it." Word of his quiet efforts began trickling back to Georgetown. The faculty noticed. So did students. Jasmine, invited to a symposium on youth political transformation, brought up Barron's name unprompted. "You can't fake that kind of work," she said. "And you can't ignore it either." The moderator asked if she still considered him a political threat. "No," she answered. "I consider him a political student." The symposium clip went viral not because of drama, but because of the grace embedded in the response. "That's leadership," one user tweeted. "Not just being right, but being generous with power." A month later, Jasmine and Barron appeared on a panel together. The topic, truth in leadership. It was tense at first. They didn't agree on everything. But something remarkable happened. When Jasmine spoke about systemic inequality, Barron listened, really listened. And when Barron spoke about legacy and reform, Jasmine didn't roll her eyes. A photo of them shaking hands at the end became one of the year's most shared images in political journalism. They weren't friends, but they were no longer enemies. They were two people reshaping the limits of public discourse, and the country was watching. The image of Barron Trump and Jasmine Crockett shaking hands at the Truth in Leadership panel had reached millions. It was reposted with captions ranging from growth in action to cautionary tale turned collaboration. But beneath the polished optics, both were still navigating the complexities of their new public roles. Barron had returned to Georgetown with a new project launching a campus-wide political integrity initiative. It started as a student club, but quickly became a multi-department program focused on building curricula around ethics, digital transparency, and leadership accountability. Surprisingly, Jasmine agreed to serve as an honorary advisor. The first event under the initiative's banner drew nearly 500 students. Barron stood beside Jasmine as she delivered opening remarks. "You don't have to be perfect to lead," she told the crowd. "But you do have to be honest enough to admit when you've fallen short." Barron's keynote that evening was titled "Beyond Redemption." He talked openly about the damage of inherited narratives and the prison of political branding. "I was raised to weaponize rhetoric," he admitted. "But truth, real truth, isn't a performance. It's a process. And it's terrifying." The applause was more than polite, it was earned. Still, not everyone was ready to embrace Barron's transformation. Conservative alumni wrote op-eds questioning Jasmine's judgment in aligning with someone who once embodied everything she opposed. Meanwhile, progressives questioned whether Barron's evolution was just another strategic rebranding. In response, the Political Integrity Initiative issued a public statement clarifying that it wasn't about political forgiveness, it was about educational honesty. Behind the scenes, the strain began to show. During a strategy meeting, Jasmine asked Barron whether he'd ever considered stepping back entirely from politics. "Maybe your power lies in walking away," she said. Barron stared at the conference table, then looked up. "I've thought about it every day. But walking away feels like silence. And I've been silent for too long." Their dynamic had evolved. Jasmine was no longer a challenger, she was a check on his instinct to posture. And Barron in turn reminded her not to lose faith in the possibility of change. Meanwhile, national media had begun labeling them the unlikeliest political pair. A joint interview with 60 Minutes followed. The interviewer asked, "Is this alliance real or just strategic image repair?" Jasmine didn't blink. "It's accountability and progress." Barron added, "It's not about me or her. It's about everyone watching who needs to believe growth is still possible in politics, but not everything went smoothly." A leaked email thread showed Barron discussing potential donors for the initiative, some with murky affiliations. The backlash was immediate. Hashtags like Barron backslide trended. Jasmine, furious, demanded a public explanation. In a press conference, Barron took full responsibility. "I made a mistake. My ambition got ahead of my ethics, but we corrected it and we're publishing all funding sources going forward. It was a turning point. Instead of destroying the initiative, the scandal reshaped it. Transparency protocols were put in place. Jasmine insisted that student panels approve all external partnerships. Their bond strengthened not because they avoided conflict, but because they weathered it. At the end of the semester, they co-hosted a TEDx Georgetown talk titled Narrative versus Reality. Jasmine's opening line, "We don't have to agree to build something worthwhile, but we do have to respect the truth." Barron closed the event with a line that would be quoted endlessly. "If politics is a theater, then let's burn the stage and build a forum." Applications to the Crockett Trump Leadership Award tripled. By year's end, Jasmine was nominated for a National Public Service Award. Barron, once a pariah on campus, was voted student speaker for commencement. He declined. "I'm not done learning," he told the dean. "Give the mic to someone still in the fight," and in a small classroom tucked behind the library, he continued mentoring students quietly, intently, without cameras. Because for the first time in his life, Barron Trump wasn't performing. He was serving. It was a quiet spring afternoon when Barron Trump slipped into the university chapel. The room was empty, save for the faint echo of a piano being tuned nearby. He sat in the back pew, a lone notebook in hand, not because he was writing a speech, not because he was rehearsing a debate, but because, for the first time in a long time, he was writing to understand himself. His thoughts poured out like water, finally breaching a dam. Memories of shouting crowds, of cameras, of Jasmine's voice cutting through silence. "Do you even believe what you're saying?" He remembered the weight of her disappointment more than the sting of her accusations. Weeks had passed since their last joint appearance. Jasmine had taken a short sabbatical, citing exhaustion. Barron didn't blame her. The backlash, the praise, the scrutiny, it was all consuming. And still, he stayed. He'd declined an internship with a rising senator, turned down an op-ed opportunity with The Atlantic, even told his father bluntly that he wouldn't be attending the family's donor retreat in Palm Beach. "I'm not a pawn anymore," he said. Donald Trump had responded with silence, a rare, deafening silence. Meanwhile, Jasmine returned, quietly, without fanfare. She slipped into Barron's office with a coffee and a raised eyebrow. Ready to get back to work. He smiled. Always. Together, they drafted a new framework and ethics module for high school students interested in politics. They called it Truth Before Triumph. Schools across the country requested pilot versions. Teachers wrote in grateful for resources that didn't sound like textbooks. Students shared testimonials. One wrote, "I never thought politicians could tell the truth until I watched you two fight and then rebuild." On campus, they started a mentorship program for first-year students. Every Friday, Barron and Jasmine rotated between classrooms, sharing case studies, hosting guest speakers, and most importantly, listening. Listening to the stories of young people raised in chaos. Young people are skeptical of every institution. Young people trying to decide whether integrity had a place in power. And through it all, Barron changed. He still stood tall, still carried the bearing of someone raised in gilded halls, but his words slowed. His answers softened. His questions got better. During one session, a student asked, "Do you ever wish you could just be normal?" Barron paused. "Every day. But the point isn't to be normal, it's to be better." Jasmine watched him answer and didn't interrupt. That night, they sat on the chapel steps. Jasmine lit a cigarette. Barron declined. He just stared at the stars. "You know," she said, exhaling smoke, "I never thought I'd respect Trump." He chuckled. "I never thought I'd earn it." She nudged his shoulder. You didn't. You're still working on it. They sat in silence. Then Barron spoke. Do you ever think we're just giving people false hope? Jasmine looked at him, eyes steady. Hope's not false if you fight for it. That line stayed with him. 2 years later, Jasmine Crockett ran for Senate. Her campaign slogan, Truth Before Triumph. At her announcement rally, Barron stood quietly among the crowd. No cameras, no press pass, just one more citizen among thousands. When she took the stage and spotted him, she didn't wave. She didn't call him out, she just smiled, and that was enough.